Ladies and gentlemen, we're back again, and this time it's going to be a little bit of a roundtable mini debate. We're going to be talking about Ilkay Gundogan, Bernardo Silva, and Kevin De Bruyne. Is there a best configuration? Is any one of them better than the others? Should anyone be dropped? Is Kevin De Bruyne a bit of a myth? Is Ilkay Gundogan underrated? And is Bernardo Silva, as we all know, the world's greatest footballer? I'm going to throw it over to the gentleman here. Martin, you're representing Ilkay Gundogan. Rich, you're representing Bernardo Silva. And Ryan, you are representing Kevin De Bruyne.
Got some stats here from last season and the beginning of this year. And believe it or not, we have got 7 Manchester City players. It goes in appearances, how many times they've won, draws, losses, goals, and minutes in that time. Now, believe it or not, Ilkay Gundogan is 3rd in that list. On 55 appearances, 43 wins, 4 draws, and 8 losses. 19 goals with 4,014 minutes. Above him is Riyad Mahrez and Phil Foden. Below him is Kevin De Bruyne, who's bottom of that 7, actually. And Bernardo Silva ain't in no list.
So, gentlemen, Martin has fired the opening salvo of this debate. Who wants to go at him?
I think it's fairly obvious why Bernardo's not on the list. He's too good to be compared to the rest of them. Anyone who's watched City this year knows that aside from possibly Phil Foden, that Bernardo is now head and shoulders not only the best player and most important player in our team, but arguably the best and most important player in the Premier League. Bernardo, criminally underrated. His work rate, his technical ability, his ability to bring the ball down, his passing ability, his tenacity, and his football brain make him arguably the first name on the team sheet. Now, I see City's midfield now. I think Rodri's got that CBM locked in, and Bernardo has got a place locked in front of him. So for me, the question is, which one of your 2 players, De Bruyne and Gundogan, should be playing alongside Bernardo in the best City team? Because I don't think you can pick a City midfield without Bernardo.
Bernardo Silva does actually prove that point. He has a win ratio when we're in the team of 77%. When he plays with Ilkay Gundogan, the win rate goes to 76%. They played together 162 times. When KDB has played, they've only played together 136 times with Gundogan, leaving a win rate of only 64%.
Now, can I just say something here so that we're not accused of throwing the baby out with the bathwater? We're not writing off Kevin De Bruyne here. What we're actually saying is that we've got options, correct? Ryan, you've not fought your corner yet, so defend the indefensible.
Well, I feel like it's a lot more defendable than Gundogan, because I don't think either player necessarily detracts from Bernardo any more than the other. But De Bruyne is undoubtedly a much better footballer in pretty much every aspect compared to Ilkay Gundogan.
Well, the stats don't seem to bear that out, Ryan.
I mean, Gundogan had a good patch for 1 to 2 months when we needed him last season and did nothing for the rest of the season, which has really boosted his stats overall, really. De Bruyne's still the best midfielder in the team, really. Good. I think Bernardo offers a different role to De Bruyne, but I think for that 3rd midfield spot, despite the fact that De Bruyne is probably the best midfielder in the squad, he's probably the 3rd in that midfield on the team sheet, which says a lot to the quality of Bernardo, and obviously with Rodri being in that other sort of role in the midfield. Compared to Gundogan, I don't think it's really much of a debate. I don't think Gundogan has many legs to stand on. I think the best midfielder. Martin, you keep mentioning the stats, but I don't think you've actually said what the stats are yet.
Well,
you've just kind of said stats.
Well, I have.
Well, I will say, Ryan, in the last 2 seasons, so since the start of last season, the midfield of Rodri, Gundogan and Bernardo has started 24 games, and we've won 22 of those games, drawn 1 and lost 1. And the only game we lost was actually away at Brighton, where we played most of that game with 10 men. because Cancelo got sent off. So clearly it's working. And it interests me because when you watch international football or you watch the big moments, De Bruyne is probably the best midfielder in the world. But on the flip side of that, our midfield is possibly stronger when he's not in there. Whether that's, I've had a theory in the past that some of the players get a bit lazy when De Bruyne's playing because they think he's going to produce the moment of magic. So they pass on responsibility, whereas when he doesn't play, they all really step up. But it is an interesting, phenomenon. Can you have the best midfielder in the world and have a better midfield without him in the team? I mean, my solution is play him false nine because he's too good to leave out. But I think there's a strong argument now to push him up and have Gundogan and Bernardo.
You said there about best midfielder in the world, not necessarily in our best midfield, and you'd play him at false nine. If City bring in a striker, there are 2 or 3 players that aren't going to make the team sheet anymore because Phil Foden's the best choice on the left-hand side. Gabriel Jesus is the best choice on the right-hand side. So that means no Jack Grealish. Bernardo Silva's guaranteed a place in the midfield unless he's dead. Then it's De Bruyne, Gundogan and Grealish maybe fighting for that other position. I think everyone would accuse us of a massive heads gone if a fully fit team, De Bruyne's fit, Gundogan's pick, and we pick Gundogan over De Bruyne. I think everyone would accuse us of a heads gone. But Martin wants to tell us that we should be thinking differently.
Yeah, I mean, just so Ryan's clear, I want to just go through them stats again, just so he's absolutely 100%. Bernardo Silva, 213 appearances, 37 goals, 77% win rate, 165 times he's won in those 213. So 77% for Bernardo Silva. So Bernardo Silva, this argument isn't about Bernardo Silva. Bernardo Silva's in. The argument is now KDB and Ilkay Gundogan. Now, Gundogan, 219 appearances. He's won 159 of them. 73% win rate. That's with Ilkay Gundogan in this Manchester City team when he's played. KDB, 272 appearances. So, the most. 70 goals, which you would expect from a KDB. You would expect him to come in and be top of the goal rank. He's won 188, which is actually 69% win rate with KDB in the team. So surprisingly, KDB has actually the lowest win rate in the team out of 3 of them in there. Now that's with the 3 of them. Now when they play together, because I've also gone delved and looked into playing with Bernardo, playing with KDB, and vice versa. Bernardo, when he's, like I said, when he's played with Gundogan, which is 162 times, there's a win percentage of 76%. KDB, when Bernardo Silva plays, they've only played together 136 times, 64% win rate. So there's a massive drop there, in it. Now, obviously, what that doesn't take into account is KDB. It just says playing with them. Doesn't play, so that could be KDB number 9, or it's within the team together. It doesn't necessarily say they were playing next to each other.
I think there's 2 issues that points, Martin. Firstly, I think because KDB is the best midfielder in the world, he gets played when he's 85% fit. Yeah. And I don't think that the others get played when they're not fit in the same way. So I think KDB, this season's prime example, and quite a chunk of last season, he's not been allowed to get to his peak fitness and form, which I think is something that as a club we need to get him fit and firing. I think the other thing I suspect is that I think Bernardo plays better when KDB's not playing, whether that's because he takes on more responsibility or whether it's because they take up the same positions at time and, he defers to KDB in those positions and so doesn't play quite as well. I'm not sure, but I do think there is some issue there with Bernardo and KDB and that space.
I think when you look at Bernardo over the last few games when De Bruyne hasn't played, he seemed to operate more on that right-hand side, which is predominantly, obviously, De Bruyne mainly, he's that right-sided attacking / centre mid, whatever you want to call it. But he drifts out onto that right-hand side essentially as another right winger a lot, and then spent a lot of last season in that false 9 rotating throughout everywhere. I think playing Bernardo on the left shouldn't necessarily detract anything from his game compared to Gundogan playing on the left and Bernardo mainly being on the right. Apart from it, like, you don't necessarily have those same opportunities to, say, cutting on his left foot, which Bernardo's very good at. But
there's a couple of things I want to put to you, by the way. So, it is without doubt, Ilkay Gundogan and Kevin De Bruyne have been match winners for us in different seasons at City. I remember a couple of years back, like, for example, De Bruyne's goal at Chelsea at Stamford Bridge, if you remember.
Yeah.
Incredible goal, won us the game. He's done that on multiple occasions.
Pushed us on to the title.
Yeah. Ilkay Gundogan last season was very much a match winner for us. Now, what I'm curious about is, have you got any stats, or does anyone know anything about what Ilkay Gundogan and De Bruyne together are like as a midfield pairing? And I want to point out to you that our win rate goes down to about, I think it was 50% when Gundogan plays without Bernardo. So I don't necessarily know who his partner is, but when Gundogan plays in midfield without Bernardo, the win rate drops way down. So I'd be interested to know what the win rate is when KDB doesn't play with Bernardo versus when Gundogan plays without Bernardo, and again what their win rate is when they play together.
I think a lot of that will be down to the fact that Gundogan doesn't necessarily have the legs to make up. Like, if you have a midfield of De Bruyne and Gundogan, you don't have those legs that will do the gritty stuff that Bernardo does.
It's a very slow midfield, isn't it? Very slow, especially if you had like someone like Fernandinho. If you had Fernandinho, Gundogan, and De Bruyne,
season,
very slow.
I can't remember what season it was. I think it might have been the year that Liverpool won the league, where you were getting, coming out of every week, there was a lot of times where we'd play Gundogan and Fernandinho, and everyone would just be saying, this midfield is way too slow, has no legs in it. And De Bruyne's just left it horribly, just having to do everything.
The worst midfield, considering the quality of the players, for a few games we played Rodri, David Silva and Gundogan. And they were just, for three really world-class players, they were just awful as a midfield three.
I mean, I did, going through all this research and a lot, I did find a quite a good article, and it was on the Premier League News Now website, and it was just an analysis of Manchester City's midfield, and the headline is Manchester City's midfield pair that make them tick, and it's not Kevin De Bruyne. And it goes on to talk about Ilkay Gundogan and Bernardo Silva together, and way Pep deploys them. And it's basically how he uses two central number 8s rather than a Kevin De Bruyne who can play as a 10, for example, who pushes forward. Because what the article goes on to say, in essence, is that with Bernardo and Gundogan together, they can both do each other's roles while the other one then sits. With a Kevin De Bruyne, as much as probably he has come back and try it, he can play that deep role. As Rich mentioned, De Bruyne has more of a free role, very much like a David Silva.
That might be, Martin, you might have hit something on the head there, because Ilkay Gundogan, when I think of him, Ilkay Gundogan is a competent 6. He's not my first choice 6, but he's a competent 6. He's a very good 8, and he's a decent 10. Whereas Kevin De Bruyne is a decent 8, an excellent 10, and a free roaming player. He's one of the best in the world. So maybe it's sort of like a more of a horse for courses argument, because Ilkay Gundogan's more regimented, but Kevin De Bruyne is more of a wild card, which sometimes you need that wild card. Ryan?
I think that one point I want to make is, like, there was a lot of time where there was a period of time where you were getting a team that had all three of them in, and Bernardo was on paper starting on the wing, but in the game you often saw Bernardo playing that third midfield role, and De Bruyne was essentially playing as the right winger. So I think you could even make a case for all three of them starting, because we were playing good football at that point when all three of them were starting. But in terms of, if you want a midfield 3, I think it has to be Rodri, Bernardo and De Bruyne. I don't think Gundogan overly comes into the conversation regardless of the stats.
Gundogan played the deep line role, and then he broke late into the box, and he was Johnny on the spot putting it into the box. And that was, at times, the way Pep Guardiola wanted to deploy Gundogan. And Bernardo had to be disciplined. As much as, let's be honest, Bernardo's been disciplined this year as well. Because if you look, everyone said Rodri's game has gone up. And for me...
Well, Martin, I mean, I think it's safe to say Bernardo's game's gone up as well. He's found new levels
no,
as well.
What I'm saying is, I'm paying this compliment to Bernardo. Rodri's game gone up because of Bernardo. Because Bernardo comes back and will do the dirty stuff. KDB will, but I always look at a KDB very much like a David Silva. He had that free role. Sometimes you can see him on the right, sometimes on the left, sometimes through the middle. And for me, Gundogan and Bernardo together just work because it allows especially Rodri, to do his job properly. And I just think there's times in games where Rodri looks crap because he's left on his own.
So you're saying we're more defensively frail with KDB over Gundogan? That's not it's a fair shout.
I think it exploits Rodri.
Sure.
It exploits Rodri big time.
Rich, have your sort of final say on it, and then we can settle the debate once and for all, and you can all tell me what our first choice midfield is.
I think, overall, De Bruyne is the best midfielder in the world, so it's hard to not have him in the side. But at this time, at this moment, I don't think De Bruyne is fully fit. I think he's not fully confident. And I do think if I was playing a Champions League final tomorrow, I would start with Rodri, Bernardo and Gundogan and have De Bruyne coming off the bench. Because I don't think at the moment he is playing as well as the others and as much a part of the team as the others. So I find it hard to be saying this, but I don't think he merits his place at the moment. And I think Gundogan probably doesn't get the respect he deserves because I think his form in the run-in to the title we beat Liverpool by a point the season after, I think it was the season after the Centurion season, his form in that 14 game straight wins when we had other players like De Bruyne, Fernandinho not fully fit or out the team was the secret to us winning the league that year and was an absolute phenomenal run of form. I think he had another one last year in December, January, February, which was absolutely key to us winning the league. And I don't think as a player he quite gets the respect from City fans overall that he merits.
Kevin De Bruyne is one of, if not the world's best midfielder. But what you've got to look at here is what suits Manchester City right now. And right now, Kevin De Bruyne is not fit. He's 30, 31 nearly. He's getting them niggly injuries. Last year was away with a load of muscle injuries. Yes, I know Gundogan's old as well, but for me, right now, De Bruyne, I would use maybe more of an impact sub to let him wait. I mean, bringing on De Bruyne, he'll scare any team. That sounds sacrilegious, what I'm saying here. Saying Kevin De Bruyne, bring him on as a bench, and I feel awful saying it. But look, if I'm looking at balance and looking what else gets the best out of the rest. And for me, the big key thing for me is it helps Rodri because Rodri ain't ready to do it on his own. And that's the key thing. So I'm going with Gundogan and Bernardo.
If we're talking right now with De Bruyne not being fully fit, I agree. But a fully fit De Bruyne is better than any midfield on the planet. So, I mean, fully fit, De Bruyne gets in there, no question.
Gentlemen, I'm sure that this will be an interesting debate in the comments, and I do hope that our viewers leave a few. Let us know what you think. I think we're leaving this situation in the same way we entered it, unfortunately. Undecided. It's horses for courses, isn't it, gentlemen? Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's game dependent, it's fitness dependent, but what we can all agree on is that Bernardo Silva starts no matter what. Thank you, and we'll see you in the next one.